Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to paint a landscape. We're going to paint a landscape by Thompson. He's one of the group of 7. Now a lot of people think that it should be just the group of 7 and he's part of it, but he is not. Unfortunately, he passed away before the group actually had their first show. So this is why it's always the group of 7 and Thompson, or Thompson and the group of 7. Either or is sort of how they always sort of present it. I decided to paint a landscape by another artist because I've done this now twice with you. We did a still life when we painted a segment of Suzanne's, and then we did, portrait by Vermeer, the girl with the pearl earring. So we've done sort of 2, and if you've been following along in this segment, this is now the 3rd segment, because we're going to do this portrait, and again it's going to be by another artist. Now I chose this one because it's nice and bright, has lots of color in it, and I love the brush strokes that Thompson uses. This is the thing that I want us to concentrate on today, are the brush strokes, because we, like Suzanne, where we could actually see those brush strokes. Again, we actually want to see those brush strokes. We want to be able to layer in that paint in such a nice way that it sort of builds up, but we can still see those brush strokes. So we're not going to be over blending or blending and doing a lot of glazing, this kind of technique, as we did with the Vermeer. So here we go. We're going to start this landscape today, and we're going to use an 11 by 14 canvas. You're going to find in a lot of these segments I'm using this size. It's a very nice size to use. It's not that big, it's not that small, and we can generally, well, you can paint and complete a picture fairly quickly on this size. To start our landscape, I've prepped my canvas already. I've got cadmium orange on it. I'm going to use my chalk now to sort of map out where I want things to be. So I'm looking at my picture up here. I'm going to sort of figure out where sort of this horizon line starts, which is about here. And it's a little bit lower on the other side, a little bit, so I just sort of mark that. And then I'm just sort of going to draw in that hillside, that horizon line over here. So that gives me a little bit of information. I'm going to now do this back area of where the water is. Comes forward, a little bit of a zigzag. And then we have these 2 canoes, or whatever the heck they are here. And so we're going to put those in quickly. And see whether or not I've got enough space down here for some. Now, our canvas is going to be a little bit longer than the actual painting or photograph. So we're going to have to sort of fill in maybe a little bit of water over here that isn't actually in the picture. But that's okay, we can do that too. And I'm just seeing whether or not I've got enough room for these boats. And I'm just looking at the distance in here, and I think it's going to be okay. All right. So now we've got a basic layout. We've used our chalk, which is easy to erase and to adjust with. We're going to start at the sky and work our way down, which is how we do landscapes. You start at as I always say, we start at the top, and it's not so much the top as it is the background. So we're going to start at the background, which is the sky, then we'll do the middle ground, which is all these hills and trees, and then we'll come forward and do the boats. And we can do this fairly quickly. First thing we need to do though is to put our paints out, and you can see I've got all my paints laid out here. I've got lots of colors out here. Not sure if I'm going to need all of them, but I always like to be prepared. It's like a Boy Scout. Always be prepared. So because if we start to paint, and this is just you know how people are. If we start to paint and we think, oh, I really wish I could use this color, and you don't have it out, we're so lazy, we're not going to squeeze it out, we'll go and use something else that's sort of not as good as, or not exactly what we had in mind. We sort of compromise. But we don't need to compromise if we've got all the colors out here. We can always just sort of dibble dabble into them, and it looks like a lot, but it's not. It's not a lot of paint. First thing we're going to do is wet our brush, And then I'm starting to sort of look at the picture, look at the photo, and starting to see what colors I think that he's used. Now, the color blue in here, probably a little sort of, I got some phthalo sort of turquoise up here, which I like to use. So we're going to put that out, and that comes pretty close, I think. And if you're not too sure, I will actually sort of mix my color, and then I will put it up close to the picture. It's like a color swatch kind of thing. Why not? And you can see whether or not that's sort of going to work out. So I'm going to sort of put in these blue sky areas where I think they should be. And because this is sort of a smaller canvas, I'm going to sort of take this approach. Oftentimes I'll have people I'll tell them when they are painting is to just do one section of a sky and then move on and do the other section. But as I said, this canvas is fairly small, so we should be able to sort of map out where the sky is going, the blue parts of the sky are going to be. Now, do I need it to be absolutely perfect? No, I don't. Now, you're going to see in the photo that we are using that there are lots of little bits and pieces of orange that you're going to see. Now that I'm pointing it out to you, you're going to see that. And this is how I came to understand of prepping our canvas and using cadmium orange underneath is actually through the group of 7, specifically Thompson, because I could see in his paintings all these little bits of orange showing through. I thought, and I looked at it and thought, did he actually come in and actually put those little, no, what he did was he painted the whole canvas like we've done here, orange, painted on top, but left these little spots to sort of peek through here and there. And in doing that, he adds that little warmth to the whole thing, adds that interest. And it doesn't really show up unless you're really looking for it. Now, I'm going to do the clouds, and I'm starting to mix some white with a little bit of that purple, dioxide purple. The color I'm going to add to it a little bit is this cadmium orange, which is sort of going to give us more of the cloud cover, I think, that I want. We'll see. I might just come in and it's not bad, but it's not really what I want. Lesson number 1. So if you create something that you're not too happy with, I'm going to just do ultramarine blue here with some white, and you're not too happy with it, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this other stuff into it a bit too. Stop. Don't continue using a color that you're not happy with. Try and figure out what the color is that you do want. I mean, I've said this story before, I told this story before, where I'll go around the room when, my students are painting to see how they're doing, and I will look at something and it's like, the color's all wrong, right? And I'll say, is this the color that you see? And they'll say, no, but, and I'll, I'm waiting for the but part, right? And so, but I had lots of it made up on my palette, so I had to use it up. And I'm like, oh, my Lanta. It's like, jeepers creepers. No, you don't have to use it all up. It's not that much paint. You want to be able to paint with the colors that you want to use. All right, now I'm not going to go all the way across here. I'm just going to stay put here a little bit. I'm going to create a little bit of a darker area here. I love this way that they paint using these a little bit darker undercolors here under the clouds. And as you can see, I'm not trying to do a lot of blending. What I'm trying to do is put down my colors sort of in that stacking method that we learned when we were doing the Cézanne work, and build on it. So our eye is going to sort of do the blending part, and that's what I want. And you can see I swipe my brush rather than keep adding, washing it and adding more and more water to all this stuff, because I want my paints to be fairly dense. I want this richness of my paint to come through. So we're going to continue the sky. I love doing skies. People get all a little bit confuberated, I think, when they start to do skies for some reason or other. And you don't have to. Skies are just like anything else. They just, you know, a little bit of tonal value, a little bit of color. Again, I think we get really caught up when we are thinking, oh, I'm painting, whatever it is that you're painting. I'm painting a portrait. Oh my gosh, I can't do portraits. You're sort of self-prophesizing in the sense that you're saying, I can't. When you're saying you can't do something, you end up not doing it. So let's not think that way. Let's think, okay, I love this sky. I can do skies. Skies are just tonal values and shapes. And that's all they are, and how lovely they are. And so we're going to just keep playing away at this sky a little bit. So we can get, I'm going to put a little bit of this darker stuff up here, because I've got it on my brush before I come and do some of the others. So I'm going to swipe this. I'm going to do a quick little fill in up at the top part here of the sky. And we're going to move on now and do the hill. So I've got enough done of the sky. I could spend a lot more time on it, but at the moment, no. We're going to sort of move on, and I'm going to do the hill, the next part. So the hill, again, what we want to do is to realize that things that are far away, we don't want them that dark. We know this looks pretty dark back there, but we don't want it that dark. So I'm going to use Hooker's green and some purple, both of them secondary colors. Fairly dark, and we'll see how this looks. And I'm going to sort of put this in. It's not too bad. We do want, I mean, it is dark back there, for heaven's sakes, but we don't want it so dark that we actually are successful at making black, because we do know that black is one of those tones, it's not a color, one of those tones that sucks the life, sucks the color right out of stuff, right? So we don't want to create that black look. And I must admit, this is something that students can be very successful at, as actually is creating black. They'll come along and they'll show me their work and what they've done, and it'll be like, and I'll say, wow, that looks so dark. And they'll say, well, I just used hookers and purple and quinacridine violet and all these things. And I'm thinking, and guess what? You were very successful at making black. So we don't want to be that to create such a dark area back there, not too much. I'm going to put a little bit of this down in here just because. And I'm going to use my brush to sort of map this little area off here. This is where my chalk mark is anyway, so I just want to make sure I'm sort of on the same path, as it were. Okay. Now we're going to move forward and do the trees. I'm going to clean my brush. And we're going to do these trees now that are coming, sort of, they're in the middle ground. Now, what color is that? Well, sometimes when we're, I'm going to give this stuff a bit of a miss. I don't know. I'm going to start with chromium green and see how that works. I'm going to add some yellow to it and see if that gives me the color that I want. It's sort of close. Chromium green is a very soft green, and it's nice to use in sort of the middle ground of things, middle to sort of background, because it is a very soft green. You're going to find, as you can see on my palette, I've got hookers, cadmium green, I think this is a phthalo green, and then chromium green, and they all are slightly different. And they will present themselves in your painting quite differently as well. So they will bring, because what's the object of when we're painting? We want certain times to use certain colors that push things away, like put them, you know, back in the background or rounding our edges, and certain colors we can use to bring things forward, to round, you know, to make the very round part of an object come forward, or in our foreground in a landscape to come forward. So there's going to be certain colors that are going to work better in each of those areas to help us accomplish that. Add a little bit of white to that, and I don't think so. I thought I'd see what it looked like. Didn't like it. So I sort of subdued it again. So we're just going to sort of mush in sort of this stuff. And again, you can see my brush strokes aren't too definitive because he hasn't done them too definitively. He's sort of blopped them in there. These fellows, Tom Thompson and the group of 7, as I said, followed on the footsteps of the Impressionists, sort of can be classified as post-Impressionists, because they were starting to use, whoops, too much of that, picked up some of that white stuff there, starting to use their brush strokes. They wanted their brush strokes to have an importance. They wanted their brush strokes to show up. They saw the value of actually using their brush strokes for effect. I'm going to add a little bit more cadmium yellow middle to this stuff here, this chromium stuff. And that's going to brighten this little segment up here a little bit more, because it's going to have a little bit more yellow in it. And it's going to bring this little segment, and it's very subtle, the difference between this stuff back here, which is back in that level, and now this little segment of these little trees coming forward here are just slightly brighter because they're coming a little bit closer to us. Because they're coming a little bit closer, we can add a little bit more yellow. A primary yellow is, and it's going to brighten that area up. Now the next color that we're going to make, which is an interesting color, everyone seems to have trouble with it, is to make a brown. And you're going to find that brown is not on my list of paints to buy, because I think you can always make a brown. So I'm going to take my cadmium orange, I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and add that to my orange. I'm going to add a little bit more. And there we've got a nice brown. Ta-da! How easy is that? Anyway, it's pretty easy. So we're going to sort of smush in some of this little brown underneath here a little bit, like this. It's coming forward here a little bit more, so because it's coming closer, I'm going to make this a little bit stronger, a little bit more ultramarine, a little bit more orange, make it a little bit darker, and bring this stuff here forward. Okay, the next I'm going to clean my brush. Now the next part, I'm going to go back into my blue, and I'm going to put a little bit of ultramarine into this along with that phthalo turquoise, and I'm going to sort of smush in where this blue water is. And it will help us to start sort of map out things a little bit. Now as the water gets closer to us, what's going to happen to it? That's right, it's going to get darker. And that's what we want. We want our colors to get a little darker as they're coming closer to us. And then it's going to get darker still, so I'm going to add some more. I think I'm going to add some of this, because I think he's used it anyway, this manganese blue down in here, which is a really nice rich blue. Isn't that nice? Really pretty. Then as he comes closer, he gets even darker. So I'm going to go right from ultramarine right into this, combine these two a bit, and make this richer still by this boat. I'm going to make it even darker still. I'm going to go to more ultramarine. I'm going to add some orange to this, which will make it really nice and dark and rich, and put that in here like that. And you can see how nice and rich that becomes now too. Because again, as you can see, as we're moving forward, we want this water to get darker, more intense. And again, it brings this part of the painting closer to us. The next colors that we're going to play with are the orange and the reds and the yellows that he's got in here. So we're going to take cadmium red light, mix a little bit of cad red medium. See how that looks? Got a bit too much water on my brush. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. I think I'll try that on this one just to sort of fill it in a little bit, get an idea for it. I'm going to go to the back part of it also. I'm going to darken it up a little bit. How do we darken our reds? Yes, you're right. We're going to add its complementary green to it. So I'm going to create a really nice dark but rich red for in here for this boat. Because this boat, again, the way that we, and the reason that we can add these colors together like this, are primary and they're complementary, is especially when things are coming forward. Now I could darken my red by using purple, but purple is a secondary color. And I can make this a much richer, darker red by darkening it now with its complementary. Remember way back on our color theory, when we were learning about it, these are our Christmas colors, right? And so now I can start to use some of this in the background, or not the background, in the middle ground, this area sort of in behind the boats. I can start to sort of push this in here a little bit. Now he's very clever how he's designed this picture. And this is again another thing to follow along from a master's painting, because these fellows have in their paintings, besides learning their techniques, is their sense of design, of how they put things together, how they manipulate us, and how we look at their work, because that's also part of the exercise. It's not just painting picture as we see them, which is one thing, but it's also figuring out the colors and how it's going to enhance how we actually and where we look within the painting. And I'm going to sort of play with this water a little bit because it's sort of annoying me, it's not exactly how I want it to begin with. Now, this is just a beginning of what we've started, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue painting here, and when you come back I'll have more of a completed picture and I'll show you how it's going to, how we did some follow-up with it. Okay, so see you in a bit. So I've been painting away on this picture, and what you're going to find that even though, you know, it's a small canvas, it is going to take you a little bit of time to complete it, and that's okay, and so it should. I'm just sort of lightening up some of these little spots here a little bit, because I want them a little bit lighter than what they are. And again, as things move away from us, they get lighter, and that's what we want. We want things to be lighter. See, just lightening this water up here a little bit like this, again, pushing it away. And that's what we want. You're going to notice all these nice little bits of orange that I've let sort of peek through, which is really nice. That's what we want it to do. We want it to sort of peek through. It also helps, those little spots help to sort of enhance the blues and the greens and whatnot, which is what we want. This color down here is just basically what I do is just take sort of a mishmash of colors, a little bit of orange, a little bit of purple, maybe a little bit of green, and sort of mix them together, get a very sort of grayish kind of color, gray, sort of beigey kind of color. We sort of smashed in a little bit stronger yellows through here as he did. Again, it's going to help to sort of bring this foreground forward. The darker blues, again, help to bring this foreground forward. In this picture, and again, what it helps us to do when we're following along with another artist is when we're copying their brush strokes. We want to copy their brush strokes. And this way we learn how and why they were using that brush stroke, for one thing. And there's a consistency about our brush strokes throughout all of this. So there is none of this sort of dabbing kind of things or over blending this kind of way as well. There is really just a very consistent. If we're going this way, they're very sort of abrupt. If they're going this way, again, fairly abrupt. There is this nice essence of brushstroke throughout all of it, which is really nice. We've come to see how even just adding a little bit more yellow to our green in here brought these little trees in this little segment coming forward a little bit more. So we do have some, it's helping to create that perspective, what we want. We have this nice sky back in here, the hills not too dark, but dark enough. As things start to move forward, they get a little bit more intense. As I'm saying, this is why these little green ones here, green trees, have a little bit more yellow. We start to have our yellows happening in here again, but not quite as bright as they are in the actual foreground. So everything that we see, even though when we look at it and think, well, this is yellow and that's yellow, but there is a difference. There's a difference in the distance. This is sort of further back and this is much closer. So this yellow needs to be more intense as it comes forward. These are the kinds of things that you start to, when you're evaluating a painting, to observe that and understand it and start to use in your own painting. I hope you enjoyed this segment. I did. I really do like painting along with Tom Thompson because I love his style of painting. And I'm going to continue doing a few little touch-ups on this, and in the meantime, keep on painting. Hi, welcome to my studio. Today, this class is going to be a little different because we're going to start off by talking about photographs. You'll notice in a lot of the different classes that you've been taking with me that there are photos that are already supplied, which is great, which is what I want. But now that we're going to move forward, you can start to use probably some photos of your own. But how are you going to know what is a good photo and which is not? And my students often hear me say, when they bring in photos for me to evaluate for them, I'll say, well, that's a really good photo, but I don't think it's going to make a very good painting. And they've come to understand this now, and I'm going to explain it to you why. I have up here on the board 3 photos. Now, they all are related in a sense because the last 2, the lower 2, stem from this one at the top. What I did was I took one photo from a distance, and I captured as much as what I wanted in the frame of that photo. But I also knew that I could probably come and crop in closer to get some other images that I wanted. And I do this while I have my image is still on my camera. So what I do is I'll take this photo, or a photo, then I will go to the playback mode. So I'm in playback mode, and then I can toggle in, so I can crop in closer on that photo and save it. And this is what I do. So I take a photo, go to playback mode, toggle in and crop in so I can get some of these interesting different angles of things that I want, and I sort of adjust up and down and right and left, and then I save it on my camera. So then when I go to develop them, I have all these different ones to choose from, which is a good idea, I think. And so what we're going to do is today we're going to see which one of these 3 that what 3 do I really want, of these 3 do I want to paint from. And in this case, I like this one. I like the one in the middle. Gives me enough sort of depth of field, a little bit of interest in the sky. and some interest in the foreground, just enough of sort of everything that I want, that I would like to paint. So here we have a painting that I was working on, just sort of giving myself sort of some basic groundwork for completing this photograph. Now, I purposely did this because I want you to see, and this is a common error that people make, is that when they come to do sky, they end up trying to do blendy, and then when they come to do some other segment of the landscape, they start to do some other approach, and then they move on to another area and they start to use another brush stroke. From our Thompson class, we learn how consistency of brush stroke is important. So this is what we need to do with this. I'm going to fix this sky up here, and I'm going to show you how it's going to work, because right now our brush strokes in our sky are not consistent with the brush strokes of the rest of the painting, which isn't nearly completed, but it gives us a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to take my white and mix it up into here, into some of this blue, and start to put this, whoops, too light, and start to put some brush strokes in here. Again, a little bit too light. I'm going to add a little bit more to it. Now, I've sort of changed this color of the sky a little bit because I like that sort of turquoisey kind of color of sky. That's a preference, strictly a preference. So you can see now how my brush strokes are becoming a little bit more interesting. I'm going to now do some of the white part of the clouds. And again, brush strokes. I want to see these brush strokes. See how much more interesting and connected this is becoming because of my brush strokes. And again, it's that little bit of what we learned from Cézanne of stacking our colors, right? We know that works really well. I'm going to add a little bit of this sort of purple in here a bit. A little bit more maybe. And how much more interesting our sky is becoming because we are now using the brush strokes that we started to use or continue to use in the body of the painting. Now our sky is becoming connected. And this is what we want to do with all our work. We want things to be connected, connected through brush stroke, connected through tonal values, connected through the colors that we actually use. So there is a consistency about this. And as things go away from us, they get lighter, and our brush strokes can get a little smaller still, which is always an interesting thing to do through here. A little bit smaller brush strokes, and again, it starts to soften or push things away. Okay, I'm going to continue sort of fixing up my sky, and when you come back, we'll talk about the finished picture. So as you can see, I've been working diligently on my little landscape, and now I'm just sort of putting a few sort of finishing touches on it here and there. Now what we need to remember, well, you and me need to remember that when we're painting, our brush strokes are important. So we know that we want our brush strokes to be consistent, as we saw when we started to change the sky up. We also want our brush strokes to be consistent, that when, it doesn't mean they have to be always going in the same direction, but they have to be that same sort of technique that you're going to be using, whatever yours happens to be. Could be any number of different techniques, but this is one that I'm showing how I paint. So again, my brush stroke through here, I continue through here, again, same sort of brush stroke, again, keeping it nice and soft back in here, very toned down colors, so it sort of pushes that area away. Same over here, came sort of forward into my landscape, getting my little hill in here, and a little bit stronger colors, warmer colors as it starts to come forward a little bit more. Same through here, that when I started to paint the grass, my grass and whatever else all this stuff is, started to get a little bit stronger in colors, and not only deeper, but a little warmer. So I'm using more yellows and my, probably my yellow ochres and stuff, and through that, bringing this closer, bringing it forward, which is what we want. You're going to find that the depth or the dark parts of our trees, if we make them too dark, then like this one, and for instance, this one was fairly dark, I had to lighten it up because it's further away. So I don't want the darkness in this one to be as dark as these two. This one as well, it should be the darkest. The tonal values and stuff in here should be the darkest. But if we make this too interesting, too dark, too bright, too everything, then our eye is going to start down in this corner, and that's not where I want our eye to start. So I want my eye to start sort of in this area, come into the barn, and then up into the sky. And so what you're learning as well is to interpret your photograph, paint it as you see it, but then you as an artist now have to manipulate sometimes, most times, all those nice tonal values to make it really work. We really want our eye to be able to start in one section, move into another, and then off into another. So we have 3 focal points, right? Always 3 focal points. 1, 2, 3. Anyway, so sometimes, in landscapes, we can have it, and again, a lot of landscape artists will do it so it's like in layers. 1, 2, 3, this way. So you have it stacked this way, 1, 2, 3, or from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, however. A most common one, though, is this zigzag form of doing it. So we have this sort of zigzag, sort of like a letter Z through your work. That helps us pull through our work, and that's what we want. We want the eye to move around in our work. So we've completed this piece. We've learned a lot from the Thompson class. We learned a lot from all the classes. Goodness gracious. What you're going to do is take a little bit from everything and every class that we've been following along with. And that's what you want to do. You want to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and somewhere along the line you will find your voice. And that is what we are aiming for. Well, that's what I'm aiming for, to help you find. So, I don't think there's much more I need to do to this painting, so I'll see you next time. And gee, I wonder what it is, what we'll be painting then. Bye for now. So now we've completed our pictures, our paintings. We actually need to finish our paintings. So we need 3 things that we need to do. We need to sign them, which is something I've even forgotten to do on occasion. We need to sign them, finish off our edges, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. And at the same time, we're going to put a semi-gloss finish on these as well. So a little protective medium that's going to go on top of these. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is to sign our work. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. You can either use a very small, fine brush, tapered brush like this, which you have to be very handy with it to be able to do, or you can use a Sharpie, which is what I tend to use these days. I find, especially for the smaller pieces, because I don't want my signature to be that intrusive. So I find the Sharpie works best. The other thing that you need to consider is how you sign your name. Don't just put your first name like Sarah or something like that, because it's not that professional. You need to say Sarah Smith, for instance. And you need to figure out how you're going to put that down. Are you going to do it in one line, or are you going to stack your name like Sarah Smith? However, I end up stacking my name. So I go Georgia Youngs underneath like that. Again, it's just because it's sort of a little bit a longer name, and I don't like it sort of trailing all the way across here. I like that sort of stacked look for whatever reason. You're going to find something that suits you, and that's what you need to stick with, though, every time. So I'm going to put my name on this one now. And to do this, I need to have it on my lap because I need to sort of rest my hand a little bit. So I'm going to sort of just write my name in here, Georgia, and then underneath Young's. Now, I don't put the date on particular. I don't know. I was told a long time ago it's not necessary to do that, and I just sort of have maintained not doing it. And so it's really, if you want to, you can put the date on, but generally artists you'll find generally don't. So the next step I'm going to do now is to put a semi-gloss, and golden you're going to find, for whatever reason, is the only one that I have this sort of glazing medium kind of thing that we're going to put on top of our work that has this semi-gloss, and it's called Satin, which is a semi-gloss. Give it a good shake, and then I'm going to bring this down onto my lap again. I forgot to tell my videographer I was going to do this. Put it on my lap. And then I'm going to just squirt it right on top like that. So you're going to get a nice big glunk of that stuff. And I'm going to take one of these brushes, wet it a little bit, and then just spread it around. Now don't be alarmed by the whiteness of it because it will dry. So you want to cover all of this. Now it's going to give a nice evenness to your work when you put these glazes on. It was something that I didn't used to do because I paint using very little water, so my paints generally maintain their sheen, but some of you don't, so it's sort of a good thing to sort of put on. And you sort of put it on a bit of an angle a little bit just to see sort of where it's at, just make sure you've covered it all, and then just sort of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to make sure you've covered the whole thing. And you don't want any ridges again with it, so you're going to go back and forth, and you just have some fun with it, back and forth. Cover it all up. Doesn't take very long. And it dries pretty fast. There we go. Probably doesn't look all that much different, but it is. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is to really finish off our edges, and I'll show you how we'll do that in a sec. So we have put our signature on. We have covered it with our glazing medium, which is really nice. Now we're going to finish our edges. And what I do is I don't use my really good paints. What I do is I go to the hardware store, get a very, a tin of latex of some sort, have them tint it as dark a blue as you can get them to tint it. And then I have them double that up again because I really want it dark. And then, or if you like dark green, you can go dark green too, but I like the dark blue. And then you're going to take your foamy brush that you're going to get at the dollar store and put it in the paint a little bit. Now, to be truthful, I don't usually do this on my easel, this kind of process, because it is messy. I do this on the floor. I usually put up I put a drop sheet down on the floor and then do it. And I'll do them all at the same time. Now, you're going to find that once you do that, some of this comes forward on the front part. So you need to have a damp cloth handy, and you're just going to run that along the edge like that, and it picks up whatever's come forward onto the front part of your canvas, and you don't want that. You just keep repeating each edge the same way. And once you've done all four, lay them flat. I keep them all on the floor when I'm doing it, and then just let it dry. And after about an hour, come back and repeat the process. So you've got a really nice dark finish edge, which looks really nice and neat and tidy. And then your image here is just what you want people to see. I'm not a big fan of people wrapping their images around the edges of things. You painted this on the canvas in the front, that's what you want people to see, not these sort of wraparound things. so much. I really like just the edges finished off. There's nothing left more for us to do except start a new painting. So I'll see you soon when we'll start something new. Bye for now.